And we're back with our guest, Lord Conrad Black, discussing his newest work, The Political and Strategic History of the World, Part 1. Lord Black, a little bit of my observation of this book is that it seems to be a throwback, and I mean that in a positive way, to the great history, that the fact that a lot of history today dwells on what I would call micro topics. Was this also something that you were seeking to do to get people to understand that there's a big picture, but also that there are individuals through not just happenstance or just the pervasive political or cultural dynamic, but there are great individuals who accomplish great things and they should be studied?
Yes, this isn't what's commonly called the great man theory of history. But the fact is, Tony, that people make history. If there weren't people, there would be no history. And obviously, there would be no people to write or read history either, because there wouldn't be any history. But so you're really talking about people, but not necessarily great people. I mean, some of them are utterly wicked and terrible, and some of them are very mediocre. But the history is made by people. And the way to make history interesting is to emphasize the personalities that are important and present them as they are. Not, I mean, some of them are great people. I mean, no one could dispute that Alexander the Great deserves to be called Alexander the Great. No one could say that Julius Caesar and his grandnephew, Octavian, Augustus Caesar, weren't extremely talented. They were. But there are all kinds of people in here who are scoundrels. There are all kinds of people who are really rather despicable, but flamboyant and colorful. And in my experience as a historical writer, the way to make history interesting, while keeping it accurate, is to emphasize the personalities. I'm not one of these people who thinks that the human species came into existence and we just sat here as we were born and things happened without people having any influence on it. I mean, I don't think any serious person thinking about that for a minute could embrace that view. So it is really people who make the history, and so I'm writing about them.
What can I'm interested in tying this a little bit to the present. So what can modern leaders learn from your study of antiquity?
What the motivations of the leaders of other countries are apt to be, what the motivations of their own populations are apt to be. I mean, what appeals to people, and what is the best way of advancing the interests of whatever jurisdiction it is that you're responsible for, and having a healthy recognition of the extreme hazard of excessive aggression, for example. History is replete with examples of people and jurisdictions that just thought they had a perfect right and ability to conquer anyone they wanted. And it never works for a long time. Sometimes it works for a brief time because of a military superiority. The genius of the Romans was Rome was just a little agricultural market town, a kind of miniature Fresno, California, where farmers in the surrounding area brought in their produce for sale, and it grew and grew gradually because it was a well-governed town. And then it developed this method of gradually expanding. And then when it expanded, it would reduce taxes, improve security for the people who live there, improve services for the people that had been occupied, and welcome the people that had been occupied into their system, and put the leaders in the Roman Senate. And this system just expanded from central Italy, as I say, all the way to the English-Scottish border, to the Straits of Gibraltar in Europe, all along the African coast of the Mediterranean to Egypt, into the Middle East as far as Iraq, and then to the Black Sea and up the Danube River, and then into Germany. And it was a huge area. Today it would be, I think, something like 700 or 800 million people. But it was 50 up. It got up to about 120 million people, or little more than that. I mean, it it was that big because it worked. Now there were occasional uprisings in parts of it, but even the Gauls, conquered by Julius Caesar in
Right.
10 years with 12 legions, even the Gauls quickly, I mean, within a generation,
Right.
recognized they were much better off with the Romans than they had been before, and not least because the Romans helped defend them from the
Sure.
Germans.
Sure.
So, but also because they gave them a better society with a higher standard of living and a justice system. By
Where
today's standards, a crude justice system, but they
Sure.
had a justice system.